When somebody says something insulting to us, we tend to get hurt. So what is it that happens when we get hurt? And is there a way to live life without getting hurt? Well, if we look at this question, we need to understand what happens when somebody says something hurtful to us. And funnily enough, that is exactly the same as when somebody says something flattering or complimentary to us. So we are listening to somebody speaking, and while he is speaking, he says something that insults us. Like he says, "You're an idiot," or whatever. Immediately when that happens, we react. We react with checking this remark against the image that we have of ourselves. We check it against the projection we have of that image into the future. We check it against the recollection we have from this image from the past into the now. And we kind of retract into this fortress of arguments why this statement that I was an idiot is total bullshit. It becomes like our retreat. We retract into ourselves, feeling extremely guarded and safe by our own arguments, based on the proof of the past and our projections into the future. We also adjust the image we have of the person that is saying the insult. All this gives us security and strength. But the same thing happens when somebody says something that we like, a compliment or whatever. Only then it's in the positive direction. We kind of affirm our image of ourselves and the projections we have and the recollections we have of that image from the past into now. But again, it's like some kind of retraction into the self. Only in this case, it's positive. And in both cases, it creates strength and vibrancy and security, really. But how can you then live without that happening? Well, the answer is in this image that we have. The image and it's the projections that we have of it and the recollections, really all the perceptions that we have gathered throughout the lives, is that what creates our person. So instead of listening to somebody, we are actually always concentrating on how what is said relates to this person, to this image. And we can be completely certain of the fact that if we have the image, it's going to get hurt. Sometimes it gets flattered, but a lot of the time it gets hurt. So, quite clearly, the answer to how can I live my life without getting hurt by other people is get rid of the image. Well, that's very easily said. We have to have a real understanding to even get to that point. I already mentioned the word concentrating here. We all know what concentration is. Concentrating on something is trying to focus only on one thing. But there is something else that is quite important in concentration, and that is it comes from a center. Concentration comes from this image. There is a goal with the concentration. We want to get from one point to another point by concentrating. We want to learn this thing that we need to study, and we want to exclude all the other thoughts and sensations and noises and whatever. So we are really focusing on it and try to get there. Well, obviously, this is setting yourself up for all kinds of conflict. There will be always resistance in this. But even more interesting, really, is that in concentration, recognizing what you're doing in concentration is part of the answer. Because let's first look at the other thing that you can do, that is giving attention to something. So when I'm listening to the person and I'm giving my full attention to what he's saying or she is saying, and all of a sudden there is this insult and I'm not liking it, I'm feeling hurt, at that moment immediately I'm not attentive anymore, because all kinds of thoughts came in, and I might be very concentrated on that image and what it means and the implications and what I think about that person, but I'm not attentive of what he's saying at that point. So really, from the start, I wasn't attentive of what he or she was saying. The difference between concentration and attention is that if you give your full attention to something, then there is no center from which this attention comes. That attention is borderless. In concentration, of course, there is a center. This center really is the person that wants to get from one point to the other point. So attention really is the state, or if you can call it a state, where there is no image. It is borderless, boundless, full attention to perception. Really, that is consciousness. That is meditation. That is listening or seeing or perceiving without thought being created by it. Now, if we look into the concentration bit and see what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is to filter out everything. Basically what we're doing, we're trying to control our environment. We're trying to control our attention. And that is sort of concentration. Now, when we really look at what is trying to control and what it is trying to control, we come to the conclusion, if we observe this, that that which is trying to control and that what it is trying to control are one and the same. The controller is what is controlled. And this is quite important to see. It really means that the thinker is the thought. The feeler is the feeling. The seer is the seen. And when that is fully understood, you have full attention. You have then become fully attentive without a center. Really what this means is, at that point there are no images anymore. There is not a person there that is building this fortress. If you look at this situation from this understanding, trying to find out who it really was that was feeling hurt, you can't find him. You can't find the hurt entity, because that which was feeling the hurt, the feeler of hurt was the hurt itself. The observer, the witness, the knowing of the hurt, it wasn't hurt, it was just knowing it. And when you are in that understanding, you can live a life without getting hurt, because the images that we have, if we entertain these images, they create patterns all the time. We like something, we dislike something. It's not even these direct things like an insult or a compliment. Your whole fortress of images and projections, they include even ideas, worldviews, stuff like that. And if some other person has a completely different opinion, instead of just witnessing his opinion, that becomes an attack to your fortress, an attack to your images and the person, really. And in these patterns, there cannot be any freedom. The only way to become free of this is to see that the controller is the controlled, that the thinker is the thought, and that the feeler is the feeling. And at that point, you realize that your true nature is the knowing of it. And in that, you set yourself free from this type of hurt.